Welcome to Big Papa Rob's podcast story rewind, The Missing. I'm Big Papa Rob. Each of our stories are about one of the many missing people out there. We rewind the story of a missing person in hopes that someone will hear their story and can share information to help find them. There is always someone who knows something that can help find these missing persons. Today, we're going to rewind the story of Emma Jean Compton Layne. The last time she was seen alive was June 17th, 2017. 5 months later, hunters found her remains in a wooded area near her home in Halifax County, Virginia. Mandy, can you believe we started this podcast a year ago? June 1st of last year was my very first podcast. I started this podcast telling stories. The first podcast was called A City That Was Once Called Terminus. Do you remember that podcast, Mandy?
I do.
What city was once called Terminus?
Atlanta.
You are correct. If you have any interest in hearing my stories, go back and listen to episodes 1 through 16. In October, I switched our platform over to do missing persons cases with episode 17, telling Layla Santinello's story. She's been missing since June 26 of 2023. This year, as you know, my wife Mandy joined me in doing the podcast. I was so glad to have her start doing the podcast with me. For today's story, I was contacted by Shauna, Emma Compton Layne's sister, through TikTok and was asked if I could tell Emma's story. I told her I would be glad to, even though most of our stories are about missing person. We have done stories before about persons that have been reported missing and later found. Let's rewind the story of Emma Jean Compton Layne. She was born March 6, 1965 to Sylvia and Carol Compton. We're going to let you listen to Shauna tell you about Emma growing up.
Okay, Emma was born, where all of us were born, in South Austin, Virginia. We all lived in Cody, Virginia, and she actually lived on our home place. The daddy passed away, and she finished high school. She went to work at Thomasville Furniture Factory in Brooknell, and they closed down, and that's when she started getting in just, retail. Well, not retail, but like country stores, and she ended up buying Cody's store.
Emma's the youngest, correct?
Yes.
And then you two both shared the same birth date.
Yes, 3 years apart. I'm 3 years. I'm exactly 3 years older than her.
That's so funny. I've never met anybody who had the exact same birthday as a sibling other than a twin.
We're birthday twins.
That is so cool.
That's what she come up with, that we were birthday twins.
She didn't go to any college or vocational school or anything after high school, correct?
No.
Okay. Now, was Russell her first husband, or had she been married before or anything?
Yeah, she was actually married to Randy Rourke, and he owned a family store that had been passed. I think he was third generation to Rourke's store, and Randy's passed away he passed away in 1998, I think, and she married Russell in 2009.
Now they never did have any kids, correct?
No, Emma never had children. She
Uh,
had a lot of, how would you say? She had a lot of kids, but no biological children.
As you heard in our discussion with Shauna, Emma owned a store in Natalie, Virginia. This was one of those stores that when you walked in, you were not just one of her customers, you were made to feel like family. Shauna told us an example of how Emma ran her store. One day, a customer came in wanting a specific breakfast biscuit, and she told him she didn't have any, but to come back tomorrow morning and she would have it for him, and she did. She ran her store to serve her community. Emma was a type of person that was very routine, her daily activities. She did not deviate far from what she did day to day. She checked on her mother almost every day. A few days before Emma went missing, though, her mother had been admitted to the hospital. Emma and her sister Winona took turns going and seeing their mother in the hospital. Saturday, it was June 17th, 2017. Emma had asked her sister Winona if she would go to see their mother on Saturday and that Emma would go on Sunday when her store was closed. Saturday, June 17th, 2017 appears to have started like any other day for Emma from what we know. She worked at her store and she closed the store that day, which was at 7 p.m. Her sister Winona reportedly saw Emma's car at the store still at around 9:30 p.m., but she didn't stop to check on her. Rob, do you have any idea why Winona, when she saw Emma's car at the store, that she didn't stop to check on her? Was Shauna able to shed any light on that by chance?
well, we did ask Shauna that during our conversation, and she said that Winona said, well, she probably wouldn't come to the door anyway if she did stop. So it didn't really have a good reason. I think she was a little aggravated over having to switch days with Emma on going to see their mother.
From what we know, Emma did go home to the house that she shared with her husband. Emma had been living in the basement of their home for a while, and her husband, he stayed upstairs. We'll talk about that some more in a little bit. After Emma got home that day, we know that she was texting a friend till around at least midnight, because that last text from her friend came in around 12:15 a.m., making it June 18th, 2017. Her phone indicated that Emma never read the message. Based on all known information, this friend was the last person to have had any communication with Emma. As we discussed earlier, Emma was supposed to go see her mother on Sunday, but obviously that didn't happen. On Monday, Shauna called her mother. Now we're going to listen to Shauna telling us how she found out Emma was missing when she spoke to her mother.
So, I always called her every morning. And I called her 8 o'clock as usual, her time, at 7 o'clock my time. And we said good morning. I could tell something was wrong because Mama's one of these people that you couldn't really look at her and tell, but you could hear it in her voice.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, nobody can find Emma. And I'm like, what do you mean, Mama? Well, I've called the house. I've called the store. She doesn't answer. She didn't show up at the store. None of the girls at the store can get in touch with her. Can you get Winona? Can you call Winona and get her to go check on Emma?
Okay.
So that's what I did.
Shauna called Winona and asked her to go check on their sister. Winona really didn't want to drive over there and check on her, but she did finally agree to go over there. Emma's husband wasn't home at the time. He was supposedly on the road. Her husband was a truck driver. Winona called Shauna back and said that Emma's car was at the house and all of Emma's stuff was in the basement, including her dog. So Tuesday morning, Shauna called the Halifax County Sheriff's Office to report Emma missing. The police asked Shauna for Emma's cell phone number, but Shauna told them her sister's phone is in the basement at her home. So Shauna, at this point, is not getting anywhere really finding out about her sister. So she lives in Mississippi, but she was finally able to get to Emma's house on Thursday in Virginia to see for herself what the basement looked like, or to see what was still in there, or if the car was there, or any of that. So Shauna said that looking at the basement for the first time physically made her ill. She said it looked like a struggle had taken place down there based on how things were left. And she asked the police to investigate the basement, but they wouldn't go down there. Now, Rob, did they ever say why exactly they would not go down there, even though they knew that she was missing and the basement was all in its disarray?
No, not really. And even at the beginning, we're going to talk about some rumors here in a few minutes, but I think they kind of thought she may have just left, and so they weren't really interested in looking.
Okay. Yeah. So according to Shauna, Emma's husband claimed that Emma had ran off with some man to New York. Then it changed to being a man from Florida. And there were other rumors going around that Emma was dealing drugs and had to leave town. From what we've heard about the kind of person that Emma was, this is the most far-fetched rumor of them all, according to her family. There was never any evidence that Emma just took off. All of her stuff was left at her house. Her money, her purse, her phone, her car, and her clothing, and her dog was still there. But according to a news article that Rob read and found, J.M. Burton of the Halifax County Sheriff's Office stated, and this is his quote, "I got in contact with Emma's husband, Russell Layne, who gave us permission to go into the house and look at whatever we needed to." That was indicating Emma's husband was cooperating with the sheriff's office early in the missing persons case. The article went on to say that cadaver dogs were brought in the day after Emma was reported missing to search the area around her home. There were also ground searches and searches of nearby ponds. Shauna was feeling that the sheriff's office wasn't getting anywhere with finding her sister, and she had spoken to the Texas Equal Search and Recovery to help with Emma's case. They are a nonprofit operation and would not have cost anything for their services, but the Halifax Sheriff's Office refused to let them assist in Emma's case. Some of the family never gave up hope that Emma would be found, and in some way, I believe, hoped that Emma had left and would come back. It was said that Sylvia, Emma's mother, had stated that Emma wouldn't miss her birthday, which was July 14th. Shauna stated that their mother gave up and grieved herself to death. Their mother, Sylvia, passed away on October 15th, 2017.
November 22nd, 2017, a father and son hunting on some property that bordered the property owned by Emma and her husband found a grisly scene. The father, doing his best to shield his son from what he discovered, contacted the Halifax Sheriff's Office to report their finding. This man just happened to be an investigator from the Charlotte County, according to Shauna. Emma's remains were found 700 yards from Sandy Ridge Road at the 4000 block of Northern Halifax County roadway. According to Major Tom Spencer with the Halifax County Sheriff's Office, in an interview, stated the following: "Remains were found scattered across the ground, and someone seemed to have attempted to bury the body." Major Spencer is reported as saying it appeared to have been in a very shallow grave, and they immediately suspected foul play upon finding the remains. According to a January 2018 press release by the Halifax County Sheriff's Office, the remains were transported to the Office of the Medical Examiner for autopsy, examination, and positive identification. He's also quoted as saying, "We are still awaiting additional information from the medical examiner's office concerning the circumstances and cause of death." Halifax County Sheriff Fred Clark said in the release, "But we are treating this as a homicide investigation and are continuing to pursue all possible leads related to Miss Layne's death. This investigation is top priority." According to Shauna, during Emma's autopsy, it was discovered that the hyoid bone was fractured, indicating that she had been strangled. From what I've read on the case, and with speaking to Shauna, Emma's husband was questioned again and took more than one polygraph test and reportedly failed both tests. He supposedly got a lawyer after this and refused to cooperate with police any further. Let's talk about Emma and her husband a little bit. The home they lived in was Emma's childhood home that she had purchased after her father passed away. Even though they owned several properties, Emma's husband wouldn't leave their home, and Emma started living in the basement several years before she disappeared, after they had discussed divorcing. According to Shauna, Emma was going to keep their childhood home and her store in Cody, and Russell would get the other properties that they owned in the divorce. In speaking with Shauna, Emma had been physically abused by her husband more than once. I know based on a background check I ran on her husband, we found at least 2 assault and battery charges in Halifax County that were either dismissed or acquitted. The offenses listed did not specify who was assaulted, but I would have to guess it was Emma.
To this day, the Halifax County Sheriff's Office has not listed Emma's husband as a person of interest in this case, nor have they indicated that anyone else is a person of interest. When investigating the story, Rob reached out to the Halifax County Sheriff's Department for an open records request for both the missing persons case and the murder investigation, and he was told that this was an open case and that they would not release any information. He then emailed Sheriff Fred Clark to see if they would speak to him and give him a statement about the case, but as of the release of our podcast, that has not happened. He has not gotten a response yet. Shauna, Emma's sister, she's still seeking justice for her sister. She has several social media accounts where she posts about Emma almost daily. Shauna found Rob through TikTok. In June of 2022, she started a petition on change.org to help get justice for Emma, which has 1,203 signatures, including Rob's. He will have a link to this in the show notes, along with a link to one of the Facebook pages Shauna has done for Emma.
I'll be posting pictures of Emma that Shauna shared with me on my social media, along with pictures of where Emma was found and the store that she owned. Emma had a beautiful smile in all the pictures Shauna shared with me. I'm sure she touched many people's lives and put smiles on the faces of patrons that came into the little store in Natalie, Virginia. If you have any information regarding the murder of Emma Jean Compton Layne, please contact the Halifax County Sheriff's Office at 434-476-3334. Come June 18th, it will have been 7 years since she went missing and was murdered. Emma and her family deserve justice, and as with almost all cases, there is someone out there that has information that can solve this murder case. I want to thank Shauna for reaching out to us and telling us Emma's story, and I hope we help in some way that by telling Emma's story, it will lead to answers that will solve this case. The stories we tell about the missing, I hope, arms you with new information that might lead to finding them. Additionally, we hope that you will share the information about this case in hopes that by sharing, it may lead to solving this murder case. As with almost all cases, there is someone out there that knows something. Please come forward and contact the authorities. Once again, I'm Big Papa Rob, and this was an independent podcast called Big Papa Rob's Podcast Story Rewind with Mandy. Is written and produced by Big Papa Rob. Story editing is done by Mandy. I couldn't have done this without the support of my wonderful wife, Mandy, aka Big Mama. If you want to support our podcast, you can buy me a cup of coffee. You can find the link in my show notes or on my social media pages. Your support would be greatly appreciated. If you've enjoyed my podcast, please leave a 5-star rating and tell others about the podcast. And finally, if you have a story idea, please contact me through social media or email. A link to my social media accounts is listed in the show notes. I would love to hear from you. Today's music was The Shield by Hot Dope from Pixabay. This was a Big Papa Rob Podcast 2024. See the show notes for links to the reference material used in this podcast.